Oh, hello. Currently, there are over 27,000 different Magic the Gathering cards. It's true, but do you really know all of them? Let's find out. Many Magic the Gathering cards include, in alphabetical order, +2 Mace, Aarakocra Sneak, Ardwolf's Advantage, Abandon the Despoiler, Abandoned Outpost, Abandoned Sarcophagus, Abandon Hope, Abandon Reason, Abandon the Post, Abattoir Ghoul, and, 26,989 others. I think it's fair to say that there's not only a lot of Magic the Gathering cards, but also there's probably more Magic the Gathering cards that you don't even know exist than ones that you do. Buried within that enormous pile of cards are surely hidden treasures of value and abilities that have yet to be discovered. Presented here are 6 untapped treasures for Commander, cards that we feel many Magic the Gathering players don't even know about, but have great potential to do big things in your Commander decks. So put down your net decks and take out your notebooks. It's time to cover powerful Commander cards you probably never knew existed. And speaking of things you probably never knew existed, it's +2/+2 acrylic counters from Tolarian Community College. What? Playmats, gemstone amethyst spin down dice, it's real gemstone. And Sizomorph dividers with the TCC logo. Tokens, you want some Tolarian Community College tokens? We got those. And so much, much more at the Tolarian Community College store. Yeah, baby, I'm shilling for myself today. Deal with it. Just go to www.tolariancommunitycollege.com/store and you can pick up these awesome Tolarian Community College playmats or a gemstone Tolarian Community College spin down die. Look at that. You could have that just by going to the TCC store. Playmats and Sizomorph dividers and so much more. A lot of this is leftover product that was produced for our Kickstarter campaign. Our distributors had some extra and shipped it to our warehouse at DFTBA. It's not new stuff and was only made for the campaign. So when it's gone, but right now it is on hand and ships immediately anywhere in the world. So check out this awesome collection of Tolarian Community College merch today at www.tolariancommunitycollege.com/store. International shipping is available and it's a great way to support the channel while also showing off to the world that you are a dedicated student of Tolarian Community College. Our first card costs just 12 cents, but it's so good I say it should cost at least 5 times that. Why? Well, let's take a look at Santar General. For 4 generic and 1 red mana, you get a 5/5 alien soldier with trample and haste. It also has Battalion, an ability which triggers whenever it and at least 2 other creatures attack. In this case, for each opponent, goad up to 1 target creature that player controls. Those creatures can't block this turn. Having haste makes it much easier to get this trigger at least once, as the general just needs 2 other creatures in play to attack with the turn you cast him. The goad trigger allows you to shut off your opponent's scariest blockers while also forcing them to attack each other. I love this because it turns problems for you into problems for everyone else. The goad trigger is also awesome for table politics, since you can pick the target for each opponent as well as which opponents you're attacking to trigger Battalion. Maybe you can make a deal with one opponent to not goad their valuable commander in exchange for a favor, or turn your other 2 opponents against the main threat, assuming that's not you. On top of all of that, the general is also a 5/5 with trample, so it's not like your opponent can just push a 1/1 token under the bus once their best creature can't block. While Santar General will play very well in any deck that cares about attacking, there are a few specific commanders who will be particularly interested in this card. Ishin, 2 Heavens is 1, or Wolfgar of Icewind Dale can double the attack trigger, meaning you can goad up to 6 creatures in 1 attack. Aurelia, the Law Above, cares about attacking with 3 or more creatures. creatures, making her best buds with battalion creatures like the General. Finally, commanders who care about the goad mechanic will happily welcome the General into their ranks. Furkrog, Cunning Instigator, Cardor the Doom Scourge, and Marisi, Breaker of the Coil, are all well equipped to get maximum value out of those goad triggers. Even without the extra synergy, Santar General is well worth trying out in just about any red aggressive deck, and you certainly can't beat its price of 12 cents. Our next card is, believe it or not, half the price of the previous one at just 6 cents. Banished to Another Universe is an enchantment that costs 4 generic and a white mana. Well, kind of. It has affinity for historic permanents, which means it costs 1 generic less to cast for each historic permanent you control. It reads, when Banished to Another Universe enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until Banished to Another Universe leaves the battlefield. Historic permanents are artifacts, legendaries, and sagas. While your typical deck may not have a bunch of sagas lying around, almost all decks have mana rocks, and every deck has access to at least 1 historic permanent after all. Your commander. If you have 2 mana rocks and your commander in play, then Banish costs just 2 mana. If your deck is built around artifacts, legends, or sagas, then Banish to Another Universe is often 1 white mana to exile any non-land permanent, which is one of the most efficient and flexible removal spells available. While it's true that your opponent can blow up the Banish to get their permanent back, it's also true of every other Grasp of Fate or Cast Out variant. Plus, that's a removal spell they spent on undoing your removal spell instead of interacting with your game plan. Considering how cheap it is, they also traded down on mana to get rid of it. So where exactly would you play this card? Besides artifact decks, Banish will play very well in any deck built around legendary permanents. The single white pip and the mana cost makes this card very attractive for multicolor Legends Matter commanders like Dihada, Binder of Wills, Jedit Ojinen, Mercenary, and Captain Sisay. Saga decks like Narsi, Fable Singer, and Satsuki, Living Lore, are a great home for this card, since it's a removal spell that also triggers all of your enchantment synergies. Speaking of enchantment synergies, Banish is also a great inclusion in an Enchantress deck as well. One particularly spicy interaction is with Zur, Eternal Schemer. While it will usually only cost 1 to 2 mana to deploy the Banish, Zur's ability cares about the printed mana value. Zur can animate Banish as a 5/5 and give it hexproof to make it harder for your opponent to get their permanent back. If this Doctor Who card previously flew under your radar, give it another look for your historic or enchantment-based decks and start banishing your opponent's permanents to the Shadow Realm. Next up, we've got a card for all you token deck lovers out there. For the criminally low price of just 8 cents, check out Flock Chaser Phantom. Flock Chaser Phantom is a 4 generic, 1 white, and 1 blue for a 5/5 spirit with flying and vigilance. It has Convoke, meaning you can tap your untapped creatures to help pay for its cost. When Flock Chaser Phantom attacks, the next spell you cast this turn has Convoke. 6 mana might seem like a lot for a creature with no enter the battlefield effect or haste, but the fact that Flock Chaser has Convoke itself makes a very big difference. Remember, your creatures can still Convoke even if they have Summoning Sickness, so cards that make multiple creatures are kind of like ritual effects when this card is in play. It's very rare that Flock Chaser Phantom will actually cost you the full 6 mana. Once you've attacked with Flock Chaser, all those creatures you made can be funneled into a really big spell. Might I suggest one of the many X spells that make even more creatures? Since it's an attack trigger and the Phantom has Vigilance, you could also attack and use it to Convoke an instant during combat after the trigger resolves. How about a surprise Akroma's Will or Unbreakable Formation before the damage step to really mess with things? Since Flock Chaser is blue, you can even tap it to cast counter magic like Arcane Denial. What's that? You thought I was tapped out? Think again. Flock Chaser Phantom will be at its best in any deck interested in flooding the board and going wide with creatures. Obviously, since it's a spirit, Flock Chaser will be of particular interest to spirit commanders like Millicent, Restless Revenant, and Raynar the Ever-Watchful. But Flock Chaser Phantom's Convocability is especially potent with Kaikar the Wind's Fury. Since Kaikar's sacrifice ability doesn't require the spirits to tap, combining it with the Flock Chaser's Convocability can generate a truly absurd amount of mana. Whether you're a fan of spirits, knights, soldiers, birds, humans, or whatever flavor of token you can think of, Flock Chaser Phantom is a powerful payoff that definitely doesn't break the bank. While much of this list is about turning perceived trash into treasure, this next card best embodies that philosophy mechanically. I'm speaking, of course, of LOM Crafter Fawn, a 17-cent card whose mana cost is 2 generic and 1 green for a 3/3 Satyr Druid who reads, when LOM Crafter Fawn enters the battlefield, you may discard 1 or more lands. When you do, return up to that many target non-land permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. Has this ever happened to you? You've made it to the late game, removal spells are flying, and stuff has been getting removed. Now, while everyone else is casting their late game haymakers, you just draw land after land after land. How do you deal with this? Well, have I got a card for you. LOM Crafter Fawn, turning any number of those lands into a regrowth effect. The first card that comes to mind when looking at LOM Crafter is Eternal Witness. But if you think this is just Eternal Witness at home, think again. Because whereas Eternal Witness can only return 1 card from your graveyard to hand, LOM Crafter Fawn can return multiple cards to hand, provided of course you discard multiple lands. By late game, you've probably already got more lands than you need, and what you could really use is fuel for those lands, a lot of which may be sitting in your graveyard. Being able to cast this spell and return just 2 or even 3 of those graveyard cards to hand could change the balance of the game significantly in your favor. LOM Crafter is particularly potent in decks that care about self-milling or moving lands in and out of your graveyard. Slowgurk the Overslime and the Gitrog Monster each generate immediate value when you discard lands to the Fawn. Hazon, Shaper of Sands, and Titania, Nature's Force can play lands from your graveyard, assuming those lands are deserts or forests respectively. If you'd rather not be so restricted, combine LOM Crafter Fawn with land recursion like Crucible of Worlds, Undergrowth Recon, and Rumunap Excavator. Then it's like you didn't discard it all. Add it all up and LOM Crafter Fawn delivers a ton of value for an absurdly low price. But if you think these are some untapped treasures, then just wait until you see our top 2 picks. As we move on to card number 5, have you been tallying up how cheap all of these cards are? If not, no worries, because this next card has you covered. It's Tman of Nurgle, another 6-cent card that punches well above its weight. 2 generic and 1 black gets you a 2/3 Astartes warrior with lifelink. The Talisman has a triggered ability which reads, at the beginning of your end step, if a creature died this turn, you draw a card and lose 1 life. If 7 or more creatures died this turn, instead you draw 7 cards and you lose 7 life. At first glance, this card is a watered-down version of Morbid Opportunist. While both creatures trigger off of any player's creature dying, the Talisman of Nurgle is capped to 1 card per turn cycle and only at your end step. If you're interested in sacrificing creatures during your turn, that's not bad. It's basically a slightly worse Phyrexian Arena at that point. However, keep in mind that the Talisman doesn't care whether the creature that died was your creature. That means if you remove an opponent's creature or a creature dies during combat, you still get to draw a card. With this card in play, you can get aggressive with your attacks, since trades are a lot better when you get an extra card out of the deal. Now, you might be thinking that triggering that second condition and drawing 7 cards by having 7 creatures die is just a pipe dream, but what about casting a board wipe before deploying the Talisman? In the mid to late game, casting a cheap Blasphemous Act or Toxic Deluge followed up by casting this and drawing 7 cards is a pretty powerful swing in your favor. Dare I say that this ability has Grizzlebrand at home vibes? Okay, it's not that good, but drawing 7 cards is drawing 7 cards is drawing 7 cards. And if your deck is interested in Morbid Opportunist, or in other words, if your deck is playing black, the Talisman is well worth adding to your list as a redundancy or a budget alternative. Like with the Opportunist, Talisman will be at its best in decks looking to sacrifice creatures every turn. Commanders like Jadar, Ghoul Caller of Nephalia, and Lagamos, Hand of Hatred are perfect because they generate fodder every turn to trigger the Talisman. Talisman of Nurgle is also a warrior, which makes it a fun inclusion for party decks like Burkos, Party Leader, Nalia de Arnis, and Zagras, Thief of Heartbeats. After you've buried them in card advantage with the help of the Talisman of Nurgle, hopefully your commander playgroup will invite you back to the party. So I absolutely feel that these 5 cards we've discussed so far are awesome untapped treasures for your commander decks, but our number 1 pick is really in a class of its own. Let's take a look. So far, we've seen a huge variety of greatly undervalued cards, but we've saved one of the spiciest for last. Check out Sardian Avenger, the most expensive card on our list at a whopping 77 cents. Sardian Avenger costs 1 generic and 1 red mana for a 1/1 Goblin Warrior with a whole slew of abilities. It has First Strike and Trample and reads, whenever Sardian Avenger attacks, it gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is the number of artifacts your opponents control. Whenever an artifact an opponent controls is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, Sardian Avenger deals 1 damage to that player. Have you ever noticed that pretty much every commander deck these days has easy access to treasure tokens? Back in my day, you had to actually put the Lotus Petal in your deck, but now it comes stapled to seemingly everything. How are you supposed to deal when you can only run 1 Vandal Blast in your deck? Okay, 2 Vandal Blasts, but still, if your playgroup has been stacking up treasures, clues, or just artifacts in general, Sardian Avenger has your back. Every time your opponents sacrifice a treasure for mana, or crack a clue, or even just activate their Wayfarer's Bauble, Avenger gives them a ping. If they're too nervous to crack their treasures, just attack them with the Avenger. The attack trigger counts all of your opponents, not just the defending player. In a typical game where your opponents have a couple mana rocks in play, the Avenger will be hitting quite hard. On top of the damage from the trigger, First Strike and Trample makes it a nightmare to block profitably. If your opponent wants to get cute and sacrifice their artifacts in response to the trigger, Sardian Avenger will punish them with a flurry of pings for their insolence. And if you think getting pinged every turn is not a big deal in Commander because you start at 40 life, then you might want to check out my episode of Shuffle Up and Play, where I irritate everyone at the table by playing Zozu the Punisher, not to mention an Ankh of Mishra, and we see just how much damage a few pings per turn can add up to. Sardian Avenger, like Santar General from the top of our list, pairs really well with Ishin and Wolfgar for double attack triggers. Some commanders are actively interested in giving the rest of the table artifacts like Vazi, Keen Negotiator, Jolene the Plunder Queen, and Kibo Uktabi Prince. These commanders synergize very well with Sardian Avenger, not only providing a ton of fodder to pump it up, but also damaging your opponents if they try to leverage the resources you're giving them. Ob Nixilis, Captive Kingpin, is a particularly spicy home for the Avenger. Ob triggers every time an opponent loses exactly 1 life. Now, every Avenger ping will trigger Ob Nixilis and give you an extra card to play with. Finally, if you want to really punish those artifact players in your life, combining Sardian Avenger with O'Hare Azanil Deepest Might will turn each ping into 4 damage. Ouch! Regardless of what kind of red deck you're running, you should definitely consider teaming up with the Sardian Avenger. Wow, these untapped treasures of commanders shine so brightly, I need shades. But now I want to hear from you. What cards that are worth less than $1 do you think are unknown about or unappreciated for Commander? Let me know in the comments below. And remember, we've got tons of Tolarian Community College merch, from playmats to spin downs to +2/+2 counters and +1/+1 counters, and so much more. It's at the Tolarian Community College store. Just go to www.tolariancommunitycollege.com/TC/store. It's there, it's the link. Tolarian Community College. I'm not retaking that, you know what it is. I'm too cool for redos, and I want to go have lunch. You can help me by going to www.tolariancommunitycollege.com/store and pick up a playmat or a Lifekeeper counter acrylic thing or any of our other merchandise. Thank you, Tolarian Community College, for sponsoring this Tolarian. There's another one too. This one's at the TCC library. You're not allowed in there, but you can get it on a playmat. For sponsoring this Tolarian Community College video. It's the bomb.
La prochaine fois à Shuffle Up and Play.
We have 3 Canadians here with us today, and we are playing Tag Team Canadian Highlander.
Hi, I'm Benjamin Wheeler.
Hi everybody, I'm Serge. I'm also from Loading Ready Run, and I'm here to beat you, right?
No, we're working together.
Pascal Maynard. One of my favorite stats is I've played over 100 Grand Prix.
Wow, I don't even know if I've day 2 to Grand Prix.
Wheeler doesn't look happy.
But look at how analytical he is when he grabs those cards and scratches his head like a monkey.
Yeah.
Should we force a will it?
Oh, Oh, he's got
Don't
the
force him, will it?
There's a very interesting question. If given the opportunity, would you strip mine lock the professor?
Wow. Dude, what the hell am I supposed to do?
I don't know. You're dead next turn. Find an answer.
I'm gonna be honest with you, Serge. I have no idea what the he's doing.